the Niger River, which forms the Sahara's southern boundary. We reach it 17 days after we enter the desert from the Tees Valley. It is as if these people had all themselves come in from the desert and could not satiate themselves with the sight and the feel of water. We make our way into the crowd toward the marketplace. All along the Niger River is a meeting place of the North and the South, a mixture of races, costumes, and tongues. The Negro from the South meets with the Arab of the North, the nomadic Kreuls, Schleurs, Tuaregs of the desert. All sorts of wares and objects of odd shapes change hands in these markets. Now, doesn't he look like a tough guy from the desert and a shrewd bargainer? Did you notice the padlock in the lady's nose, placed there perhaps to keep her nose out of other people's business? But here is a local chieftain reviewing his warriors. He took these men of his to France during the World War to fight for the French, and he wears the cross of the Legion of Honor on his desert robes. At the influence of the Crusades, which are in camel, we are approaching one of the wells. Traffic was too scarce to bother us. No speed limit and no cops. Another 200 miles done easily in 2 days. We are now in a Tuareg stronghold, in a hugger. We are guests at the court of King Amenarali Anse. And then we drop. In the remote villages in the forest, life goes on as it has for centuries. After a few hours, our presence ceases to disturb, and we can watch the placid communal life of the village. The women are always at work. Here they are shelling beans, a staple of the local diet. The men do the hunting or the fishing. These people live almost entirely on frogs, or rather on tadpoles, which are caught in traps made of local reeds and vines. The traps are concealed among the reeds along the edge of the lake, and the unwary tadpoles blunder in. There is little of the excitement of the chase. The fisherman pulls his canoe along and picks up the traps. You and I could do it. But it takes a good deal of skill to steer the canoes on a straight course. The shape of the canoe is determined by the shape of the tree, and many canoes have a strong tendency to travel in circles. Outside every fisherman's hut, the day's catch is set to dry in the sun. Tadpoles hold all the vitamins in the world. The most powerful and good-looking fellows we saw in Africa were invariably men who lived on fish or tadpoles. These, well-dried and crisp, and an occasional full-grown frog will make a delectable meal. The barber shop is conveniently located on Main Street. A special study will be made of your profile to choose the style of hairdress which suits your type best. The hair is deposited in a neat little pile. This is Congo's own soapless shave. No brush, no lather, and the closest shave you ever had in your life. Different styles prevail not only in hairdress, but in the elaborate patterns tattooed by cutting the skin of the face and of the body. Many of these patterns are tribal in character and indicate the tribe and even the village of the owner of the tattooing. But there is room for a lot of individual fancy in the exercise of personal taste. Notice that his teeth have been carefully filed to a point and the two front teeth knocked out. She was camera shy and strongly objected to our taking her pictures. Our arrival in a village was usually the occasion for general rejoicing. The drums would be quickly set up. Everyone would run into his hut and return with their most elaborate costumes. No, these are not lampshades or baskets. They are Negro hats woven from local fiber. The wearer of the masks personify the chimpanzees of the forest, and their grotesque evolutions are supposed to imitate those of the chimpanzees. Note the plate lip, the huge plug inserted in the upper lip. By this time, the orchestra has appropriated the platform on the sedan. He is an individualist, breaking all tradition with this solo dance on his knees. At least one member of the audience thinks well of him. After many days in the forest, we are again in open savanna country. We were in the only region in Africa where the African elephant, popularly supposed to be incapable of taming and training, has been domesticated and put to work. It is wonderful to see the huge beasts haul easily enormous lugs stuck in the forest which no manpower could move. We were seeing our first sausage trees bearing, alas, not the juicy liverworts which seemed to hang in plenty from their branches, but entirely inedible fruit. The landscape was at last typically African. We were now in country where game was plentiful, but it was seldom that we could, unobserved, come close enough to game for photography. This busy warthog, however, apparently had not heard us coming. We reached the Dungu River, which we had planned to cross. On its far side was utterly uninhabited country, said to be a wild animal paradise. But the river, when we reached it, proved to be impossible to cross. Below us, on the sandbanks on the edge of the river, a veritable herd of hippopotamuses was asleep. The honking of the horn rudely awakened them and sent them rushing in momentary panic to the water. They had obviously been seldom disturbed, but we could not get close to them without some precaution. We succeeded, however, in watching unsuspected their family life. Mother rather anxious about baby. Father enjoying the sleep of the tired businessman. Baby seems safely in the water, but there might be a strong undertow. Now I could see the reason for the good hippo mother's anxiety. That floating log was a crocodile. He was so well hidden that even the little wading birds around him seemed unaware of his presence. Very slowly he was swimming towards the shore, and we waited for hours for a chance to photograph him on land. But nothing is more cautious or wary than a crocodile, and he was taking his time. At last he was coming ashore. Even then, neither the wading birds nor the marabou had noticed him. But at the first click of the camera, he turned and splashed back into the river. And the marabou in turn took flight. With the sedan, we explored many miles of the river bank. We would come suddenly upon sandbanks on which hippos were as thick as New Yorkers on a Coney Island beach. There must have been many thousands of hippo in that river. When we came unexpectedly too close to them, it was wonderful to see them all get up, stumble over each other in their hurry to get away to the water. The water was often too shallow to hide them. And there they would stand, nervously snorting, yawning, splashing water. We borrowed a dugout canoe from the natives and fitted it with the outboard motor we had brought with us. And in this somewhat strange vessel we explored the river further, lost ourselves in tributaries of the Dongu, and saw many crocodiles. But no transportation for the trucks across the river was to be found, and nowhere could we find a ford where we could hope that the trucks would get through under their own power without swamping the motors. I was still anxious to get some pictures of crocodiles on land, but even with the motor stopped and the men paddling cautiously, we never could get nearer than 100 feet without their waking up and dashing for the water. At last we saw one who seemed unaware of us. I signaled to the men to paddle straight towards him. They did. And when he suddenly woke up and started for the water, he nearly leapt into the boat with us. There was decidedly no chance of crossing the river under our own power. The bottom everywhere was treacherous and muddy, and the water after unexpected rains too high. We had sent for the elephants, whom we had seen at work on the edge of the forest. We planned to abandon the sedan temporarily and to use elephants to take the 2 trucks across the river into the game country. Back or going up steep 60-degree grades like this, overloaded, dripping with muddy river water. There they go, up and over. We pushed on through the high grass for many miles. This was no good to our purpose. We never would see game in this high grass. The ground was treacherous, pitted with hidden deep holes made by warthogs and hardbuck, into which the trucks would unexpectedly fall to the axles. And the bushes sometimes so high that it was impossible to see one's way ahead. I expected a high grass belt of a few miles along the river, but we cut our way through this way for the better part of a day. However, we were in game country all right. The first sight that greeted us when we came out was truly magnificent. He was an old solitary bull elephant, and the biggest one I have ever seen, with good, well-curved tusks. The sight of him gave promise of good country, and we decided to stay right there. Our plan was to build a platform well concealed in a tree, and for this purpose we had brought with us the necessary rails and boards, rope ladders and pulleys. We had cots and blankets, batteries for electric light, cooking equipment and supplies, even books to while away the hours. And I planned to live in the tree until the animals would lose their fear of us. The view from our treetop home was of breathtaking beauty. Herds of topi were our first visitors. Then elephants came out of the woods. And then a rare sight on land, a hippo far from water, unless his home was in some undiscovered lake nearer to us than the river. Buffalo under the shade of the forebears. an endless variety of antelope, carp graceful and timid, the proud and majestic waterbuck, perhaps the most beautiful of the antelopes. Warthogs, the little flags at the ends of their tails as a signal to each other, would run past. In a nearby tree which seemed to produce succulent fruit, a whole tribe of baboons would feed and chatter all day, breaking the silence of the jungle with their vulgar noise and their loud barking. We hoped to see cheetah, or at least some of the big cats, and every day we placed fresh meat as bait under our trees. At last, and the most unexpected, a leopard, so rare a sight in daylight that this picture is perhaps unique. Every one of the animals of the jungle seemed to sense his presence. The vultures flew heavily from tree to tree. The antelopes moved restlessly. The clicking of the camera made the leopard uneasy. His snarling startled the baboons, and they started wildly chattering to pour from the tree. But the noisy baboons had started a general alarm. Did you think a hippo could not run? The leopard himself became uneasy at the general alarm. Once the vultures swooped down for the leavings. And again, against its backdrop of brooding mountains, the stage is deserted. We had waited in vain for cheetah to come to our bait under the tree, but a surprise awaited us when we had recrossed the river. 2 cheetahs were waiting for us. We had often carried freshly killed antelopes on the platform of the sedan, and the cheetahs had been attracted by the smell of blood. Cheetah, or the hunting leopard, as he is often called, is not a leopard. He does not even belong to the cat family. He is an offshoot of the dog family and has the blunt claws of the dog. He is perhaps the fastest thing on legs and one of the most beautiful. We have pushed on now beyond the mountains of the moon, past Lake Victoria into British East Uganda and Kenya. After snow and ice, sand and rock, we are now in mud. We are back on so-called roads, but often we make less headway than we did through the jungle. In a rainy season, the tracks deeply plowed by the constant traffic of heavy ox carts become rivers of mud in which trucks and cars sink to the axles. Deep in this mud, heavy boulders are embedded. For hundreds of miles, the cars are subjected to such a strain that it seems incredible that machinery can stand it. But nothing stops our dependable Dodge equipment. It is also the season of the locusts, and we pass through several flights of them, so thick at times that they literally obscure the sun, so thick on the ground that the wheels slip on their crushed bodies. Through the great game plains of Kenya, and we see countless thousands of wildebeest and antelope. It is like driving through a huge zoo without cages, without fences, and without attendants. At our approach, the wildebeest are thrown into panic. Run! Run at all costs! But as you don't know where to run, you just run in circles. Giraffe, their curiosity equal to ours, let us approach within 150 feet. We make no serious attempt to catch up with them. They may not be low-slung and they were designed before the days of streamlining, but they are nevertheless capable of remarkable speed. Note the three astonished wildebeest in the background, and notice the birds clinging to the neck of the giraffe. Here are zebras. We met thousands of them. They are as common as the wildebeest. We meet immense herds of the ungainly topi. They stretch for hundreds of yards on either side of our route, but never will they divide to let us through. No, all those on the left must go to the right, and it becomes a wild race. They come from a mile away, all out, stretching their gallop until their bellies almost seem to be touching the ground to pass in front of the car. No, this is not the last, but this one is. The rains have not yet reached this region, and the ground is bare after the brush fires which sweep this whole country every dry season. The network of game trails, usually hidden under the high grass, is plainly visible. The temptation is irresistible to pursue impalas and to watch them take off in huge leaps. They often go as much as 40 feet in a single bound. The ground is rough but fairly hard, and we are traveling at 35. The springs can't take it. But not all things on the plains can be so light-heartedly chased. Here is a group of an entirely different character, and they call for a great deal of caution. They are so short-sighted as to be almost blind, but their sense of hearing and smell are marvelously acute, and they have a profound dislike of cars. Husband and wife, we thought them at first, but soon we see that they are father, mother, and junior. Better keep moving. And now, at last, when we almost despaired of seeing the king of beasts in his own kingdom, here is our first lion. We move closer, and the grass becomes alive around us. We have moved into the middle of a pride of lions at their midday siesta. Most of them sneak away, but a big lioness does not, and she circles around us threateningly. Leela and Roy pay little attention to her. They are looking for the big male who must be hidden somewhere. There he goes, asking for no fight. But in a fraction of a second, they come close to death. The lioness is coming at us in full charge. The shot has turned her over. She is running away from us now. She stumbles, she falls. It is several seconds before we move slowly towards her. She's absolutely still, stone dead. When Jack Romsford shot, she was in her last leap less than 6 feet from Leela and Roy on the roof of the car. He fired from the elbow because there was no time to take aim from the shoulder. The bullet has entered the center of her chest, torn her heart and lungs, lodged in her kidneys. With this bullet through the heart and lungs, she still ran 65 yards before rolling over dead. We load her on the car to take her back to camp and skin her. are reaching now the end of our journey. Only 200 miles separate us now from the East Coast and the Indian Ocean, and we make short work of them. In 87